Hello, I'm Bob the Bookerer and welcome to my channel. And today I wanted to talk about the books that I've been reading this week. I hope you're having a really good week, that things are going well for you. If you're in the UK, you've probably been rained on and had a lot of sunshine at the same time. It's been a confusing week, more than just the weather. Anyway, let's get talking about the week, and I hope you're having a good one yourself. So first up, we've got Flugga by Pedersen, and he's been very, very keen, as he's been in interviews, to say that this is not meant to be a word, well, it's not meant to sound like the other word. It's not meant to be a replacement for another word. It is indeed a place. It's a small island off the Shetland Islands, which themselves are off the mainland of Scotland. And so this place is incredibly remote in various ways. And that is a big part of the setting for this book. The remoteness is a big point of what's happening here. So we have our characters in this. I believe I don't actually know how it's pronounced, but a young boy called, I'm guessing Ooze, like the river, but it could be Ouse, it could be something else. He is a young boy who's quite almost ethereal in some ways. He's a dreamer. He's a bit of a person who lives in his head and sees all these incredible things, and often sees things that other people don't see. And he is living on the island with his father, who is referred to in the book as the father. And he's recently, his mother had died when he was younger, and she's referred to as the mother constantly throughout the book. They never have their names. They're always given sort of capital letter TM or TF for their names. And so he's sort of just living on this island with this man, the father, who is quite stern and stoic and is very much about sort of tradition and doesn't really talk about much, but especially in terms of his feelings and all that kind of thing. Whereas Ooze is this really almost pixie-like character, in that he's got the kind of, or like a fairy or a kind of mythical being. He has this kind of quality to him where he is so full of magic. And a man called Firth moves onto the island, or is it Frith? I'm now really doubting myself. Firth, okay. Moves onto the island for a brief period, and they strike up what becomes a really intense friendship, and almost has romantic elements to it, at least in Firth's mind, where he constantly talks about the potential of Ooze and this idea of how he should move to Edinburgh and start this life doing this other thing. And in some ways that feels like a threat to who he is as a person, to Ooze as a person, because it almost feels like it's a way of bottling up what makes Ooze so special, you know, this really ethereal type of person, and making him into somebody who goes to an art school or a business school or does a thing. You know, there's some kind of thing where almost not commercializes, but it puts some more rigid structure over him. Whereas Ooze is so wedded to the land. He is part of, you know, the island he grew up on, Flugga. He has all this ability to kind of go out and see what's happening. He knows the land so well that he can tell the small changes in environment and all that kind of thing. And so in some ways this becomes a book not really just about a sort of a very intense friendship or potentially a romantic thing, and it becomes instead, for Ooze at least, a thing about almost accepting the kind of modernity almost of moving to Edinburgh, and changing his way of life from a more rural space where everyone knows each other, and where, you know, he goes down to the rest of the Shetland Islands to do markets, and all these other things happen, and there's a kind of a very happy equilibrium, and instead this promise of these bigger highs, but that might lead to something else. And so the book, it sort of leads up towards this idea of him going to Edinburgh. I just found it really, really beautiful in so many ways. It's a stunning, stunning book. Gorgeous. Sorry, there's someone doing a lot of like lawn work out there. One moment. Something, I think they're finished, maybe, who knows. But yeah, I just found this book so beautiful in so many ways. It's just so poetic. It's so full of love. It's one of those books that just feels so utterly human and gorgeous in that it just has a real quality of magic and joy and wonder. And there's something just so beautiful about it. And I really, really loved this. I thought this was just a beautiful piece of writing. Next up, I read Like Water, Like Sea by Olumide Popoola. And this is a book that starts with a moment that's quite dramatic, where somebody, our main character, feeling that they're at some kind of low ebb. And in some ways, it's not necessarily wanting to end their life in some ways, but almost a way of wanting to stop things for a moment, steps into the water and essentially tries to, well, float or drown, or it's not particularly clear often in the character's head. And she is saved by two people, a couple who are walking by, and they take her in and look after her a bit. And through that, initially in the book, she starts to rediscover, I suppose, a sense of friendship or community or connection. There's something about the fact that two people have seen her at her lowest ebb and want to pick her up and look after her and take her to make sure she's okay. And what spins out from that is a lot that is about the idea of connection and wanting to stay alive, despite a lot of struggles, particularly around mental health in this book, and particularly around various other things that are kind of linked in terms of how this person moves through the world, and in terms of thinking about their sexuality, in terms of thinking about the world and how she's perceived. All of these sorts of things come up in the book really strongly. And so you've got this really beautiful thing of how she is trying to re-piece together parts of her life. And there's something so beautiful about how vulnerable this character is in the world around her, but also there's a real strength in just the way that the world works. But this is also not a book that's particularly sappy with that, which is what it would sound like from how I've described it. There's a real core of strength in this book that I found really fascinating. I just thought it was a really beautiful read. Last but not least, we have Cheer the F Up by Jack Rooke. And this book has since sort of been turned into a TV show called Big Boys, which made me absolutely blub like a baby. It's gorgeous in so many ways. And both the book and the TV show deal a lot with both mental health and particularly a lot around grief, self-acceptance, sexuality, and various other things that kind of come up. So in both the book and Big Boys, which is an adaptation and slightly plays around with some of the key ideas, that the main important bits really are that Jack, at a relatively young age, lost his father, and dealing with that grief and then going to uni was quite a weird moment for him, because everybody else around him most other people around him are 18, 19, away from home for the first time, really excited about partying, whatever, as is he. But there's a lot that they're carrying that he's carrying with him that they maybe don't know how to support him with, or don't really know how to access. So he is thinking about the fact that his father has died, and people around him just don't know what to say. It's maybe not something that they've experienced. And in the book particularly, I mean, he frames this book as being essentially a way of giving support, of sort of giving tips for improving mental health and dealing with some of the tough things, and particularly helping people feel less alone with that. But then in the book, what's also quite interesting, I think, is we sort of see the real story of kind of the one that Big Boy is adapted from. And there's a lot in here and in Big Boys as well, where he had a friend who was dealing with quite a lot of his own mental health struggles. And the book, a sort of subtitle for this book is and he mentions quite early on in this, is about how you also save a friend, because this friend he lost to suicide. And so there is a lot where he is talking in both the book and the TV show about the ways that actually could he have noticed something sooner, could he have supported something with his friend. Utterly heartbreaking. But the book and the show are both also very good at injecting completely absurd humor and very silly things into the darker messages. So for example, early into the book, he talks about how just after his father died, all the neighbours wanted to support in any way they could. And a way that neighbours often do that is bringing over food. And lots of family members and lots of people kept on bringing over lasagna, to the point where they had so many lasagnas that they decided to have a lasagna tasting competition to award a winner of the best lasagna. And so there's something really silly in that, whilst being incredibly dark, because, you know, he's essentially trying to mourn his father and process all of that, but at the same time he is trying to find pockets of joy and absurdity in the fact that he has 17 lasagnas or whatever it is, to judge, like enough to judge for a competition, when they then award a winner, and, you know, all this sort of silliness. So there's a lot of that in this book that I found really beautiful and funny and wise in amongst something so dark and so difficult. And yeah, it's a really beautiful book. Maybe, you know, prepare yourself going in that this is not going to be as fun and good as this book is in many ways. It's also, there's a big emotional part of this, as you might expect given the subject matter. So yeah, beautiful book. Yeah, and really, really lovely. And I just really like Jack's take on things, which is just so absurd and silly, and not deviating away from the seriousness and intensity of those dark bits, but also trying to find some of the humour in the utter silliness of what follows something like this, or any big life moment. There's always some kind of silly thing that you can find as well to latch onto and find humour in. So those are the books that I've been reading this week. I hope you're doing really well. Take care and speak to you all soon. Have a wonderful week. Bye bye.